All right. Is anybody out there? Is there anybody out there? Let me just check our settings here, folks, so we don't have any audio issues. Hang in there with me.
Oh boy. That's what I'm talking about. Oh no. Joe from the Carolinas? Are you kidding me? That guy's supposed to be banned. Now if I could just get a copy of the gosh darn stream out, we'd be in a pretty good space. I gotta put my costume on, you know. Secret Russian space program versus Elon Musk. I'm telling you, we got some serious problems here in the secret space program world, my friends. Alright. I'll let everybody mosey on in. Let's try this way. I'm gonna get some folks in here. If I can find the gosh darn link. We still ain't got no viewers. That's alright. We're just gonna keep it going until we get some people in here. Trying to spread this out on Twitter. If anybody's listening, it'd be great if y'all could spread the message, because, you know, YouTube is engaged in some censorship. And I don't know who in the heck is putting ads over my channel. I didn't notify anybody that I wanted that done, actually. It's kind of strange. It's empty. Hey, there's 7 of y'all. Thank you very much for retweeting it. I'm going to go ahead and tweet it out myself. And my deepest apologies for not being able to do this on YouTube, but we'll get into it in just a minute. I didn't even have time to make a thumbnail, y'all. All right, I will be right back. Twitter has been notified, as we say down here on the farm. Yo, be right back, y'all. Just enjoy. And matter of fact, since those of y'all are listening, I am going to go ahead and play my band's brand new single that you may have heard. It's called the UFO Song. This original song. I am on vocals as well as guitar. And I want to welcome Mario Heat from YouTube. And let's see, Secretive Everything, or Secret Everything. That's even better. And those of y'all that are hanging in there, like I said, I'll be right back at the mic, but please do enjoy this original professionally recorded song. The UFO Song goes out to everybody that's interested in the AB Paranormal UFO Secret Space Program. Let's bring some laughter and humor back into this sucker that we got right up here, and not let the hoaxers take over our beloved communities.
Perfect organism.
Let's look for UFOs from the secret space program. Beam on, phase out, give me black triangles from the secret space program. I wanna look for UFOs on a base on the far side of the moon. They must be CIA. We're in the conspiracy. Let's find frozen EVEs in an underground base beneath our face. Come on, let's go. Let's
Greetings. This is Joe from the Carolinas up here in the secret Russian space program. Privyet, do svidanya. How are you? All right. Like I said, privyet. We want to give a big shout out to Boris Beletrinsky, our friend from down in Texas, for the actually authentic Russian space program communications headset. And it's nice to see all of you. Thank you for joining me down here. We have a forum up here in Russia in the space program. Now, what I wanted to do was those of y'all that want to check in on the chat room here on Twitch, I'd like to thank you. I wanted to just let you know that Russia, and I'm certainly not even though I've got a t-shirt that somebody sent me from Russia, Yuri Gagarin, okay, the first guy in space was the Russians. And of course, the Sputnik program got up there in space before the Americans. Now, this is not an Americans versus Russians broadcast, but I did want to let y'all know that there's this kind of theory that's been floating around in my mind and in space out here in the space station. And we have these kind of hoaxers, right? These secret space program hoaxers. And I kind of feel like that's a cover. Whatever's going on with the government, we're never going to know until it's way time for it to be declassified, right? And then I thought to myself, well, is the U.S. the only country on planet Earth, as we know, that may have a secret space program? Now, you know, there's that whole North American centrism kind of thing, and then Elon Musk was on the Joe Rogan Experience show with 2 million views already, and it was just 18 hours ago as I speak today on the 7th of September. And so I thought to myself, there's a purpose for hoaxing this secret space program junk. And what it is it's, well, the hoaxers like people such as, including but not limited to, David Wilcock, Corey Good, Emery Smith, and all those jokesters, you know, the fiction writers. They do a lot better if they were writing fiction. A lot better. I think they would make a lot more money if they just came out and said, we're writing fiction and here are our sources and we've pulled it from this person and this person and this experiencer. There you go. Of course, they already did that with Ender's Game, so there might be a copyright issue there. But the other reason why I think a lot of these secret space program cover-ups are allowed, the hoaxes are allowed, is because it's not a problem. In other words, it's not classified. It's just none of us are looking in the right place. What I mean by that is that these people are coming out, they've never had access to classified programs, because if they did, they wouldn't make it 2 steps without being treated exactly like Edward Snowden, or worse. They certainly wouldn't have a predictable concert speaking time. They certainly wouldn't have a predictable autograph session and things of this nature. So what does it mean? What it means is it's a distraction that whoever it is that has these kinds of private secret space program plans, including but not limited to Elon Musk, right? Billy Carson. These jokesters want it to be a joke. It's okay because they're not giving away anything that's anywhere close to the classified truth. And then I thought, well, which country doesn't have, as far as I've heard in the popular press, a active secret space program hoaxer movement? And that country, just group of people, would be the former Soviet Union, Russia. And I know I have an international audience here, and I appreciate you, and I hear you, and I've read your emails, Boris Beletrinsky in particular. But we're not having many hoaxes come out of Russia regarding a secret space program now, are we? And I don't believe that Og Teles or Og Tellus, you know, I don't believe that Og Teles is a part of the secret space program. He may be a part of some mind control program in the same way that the Insider's insider, Corey Good, said in his interview with Divine Frequency, Teresi and Eris. He says, either I'm real or I'm mind controlled. Okay. Well, if you're mind controlled, then everything that you say is unbelievable on its face because we don't trust the government, do we? Okay. And yeah, I've done some videos, but it's kind of interesting. The women really seem to come to the defense of Og Teles or Og Tellus. It's kind of how I like to say Og Tellus. They come to his defense, and I get the sense that there are some health issues involved in Og's case that I just really don't feel it's appropriate to pry into, so I don't. Just kind of left the videos, a couple videos that I made, where they are. And I, like I said, I don't mind the guy. I don't mind the guy. I don't think that Og is doing any harm. It's very difficult personally for me to follow his logic, but then again, that's my bias. I'm kind of rooted in logic. And Secret Everything says, we like him. He's a sweetie cutie. Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I want to say hello to the mighty Professor Fez and Buggy 187. And Secrety Everything said he is paranoid. I've had direct communication with him. Okay, so am I. Well, I may be. That remains to be seen. Now, what I will say is that, to me, the only thing that I've heard coming out of Russia is these kinds of, oh, there was an Atacama look-alike skeleton. Oh, I'm a cutie sweetie. Well, thank you. I'm glad I'm wearing my glasses and my Russian space program hat to hide the face here. So thank you. I need more of a I need more of a disguise. I guess I become better looking the more disguise I wear. But anyways, the thing is that the Atacama skeleton, this kind of U.S.-based phenomenon, and I'm like, what's going on with that? And Russia's been pretty secretive. Thank you, welcome, Athlete 1976. Thank you. What is it about Russia that their whole space program was basically kept secretive until round about the 1990s, and then we started getting some information? We're not hearing reports of an insider's insider or a cosmonaut insider. We're not hearing reports of an M. Sitinsky, you know, operating on pieces of alienskis in the underground Basinskis in Russia, in the, you know, in the old Soviet Union. What's it? They call it Russia. So why is that? Is this an American phenomenon? And so I wanted to take, I guess, a bit of a cultural shift with a little bit of entertainment and fun in this, to consider the opposite side of this. What's on the other side of the former Iron Curtain? There is a program called I believe it's called the Avangard program, that's coming out of Russia, which is a glider. It's a supersonic glider. It goes, I believe it's above Mach 20. And I want to just kind of share this video with you if we can watch it and there's not too much interference. So let's see if I can pull this up for us all and we can check it out. Let me go to there we go. We're going to cut to the big one.
Russia this morning is flexing its military muscle, threatening Washington with a new line of nuclear weapons that it claims can reach almost anywhere in the world and would render American defense systems useless.
Нас никто не слушал.
saying nobody listened to us, so listen to us now. President Vladimir Putin's message to Washington was loud and clear.
Это не блеф.
I am not bluffing. Speaking for nearly 2 hours to an enthusiastic audience, Putin unveiled an impressive array of new military hardware, difficult to detect, and Russia claims impossible to intercept.
Look at this. This is their avant-garde glider. Look at that. UFO. It's a military UFO, folks. It's evading the countermeasures. Now here's the thing. I'm going to stop it right there because it's a good graphic.
Рубежей обороны показываем.
This is how it avoids defense barriers. It has unlimited range, so it can keep going.
Now, these avant-garde missiles are gliders, and they can go, I think it's like above Mach 20. I could be wrong on the Mach, but it's pretty damn high up there, and they can stay up there indefinitely. They are nuclear-powered gliders that have warheads in them. But here's what got me thinking about a Russian secret space program. And this is not a pro-Russian broadcast. I just need to make that clear. I'm broadcasting right here from these United States. It is a cartoon in CGI, and it is definitely propaganda. But they're working it. My point being that propaganda or not, the U.S. is not engaged in this kind of propaganda. And if the Russians, and the Skunks Works definitely have hypersonic jets and hypersonic missiles. We know that for sure. They have mock-ups that they've already tested. Let's see if we can find that. Let's see if I can just pull this down, and I will find it for you. So what are the Russians hiding? Well, if they're saying that they can keep something in the oceans, the Poseidon Drone, for example, this new technology, and different kinds of missiles and gliders that can be staying up in the air, aerospace, for indefinite periods of time because they're powered on nuclear, then that high tech is just what they're willing to release to us now. Now, I don't know what Russia's actual declassification program is. I would wager that the U.S., if we declassify everything 30 years behind schedule, Russia's probably more like they just don't declassify anything unless it's 40 or 50 years behind schedule. And the reason I say that is because the Russian space program, Sputnik and Gagarin and all that stuff, got way ahead of the U.S. space program, at least that which we knew about, which did, or NASA did originate out of a military space program. Okay? And so my idea here is theoretical, admittedly. I've already presented to you in other videos that the NASA concept and classified programs in the U.S. Army, Project Horizon, was they could build a moon base and actually have the sucker staffed by 1966. Now, the Project Horizon moon base plan from the U.S. Army was declassified in 1962. That may very well have been propaganda as well. And the mighty Professor Fez says, well, essentially Putin is saying, let me show you all my plans and you can work out a way to stop me. It just seems unlikely he would do this if it was a genuine project. I totally agree. What that means is, if this is what they're putting out there as propaganda, fine. Why are they putting this propaganda out now? Why now? Right? Let's see if I can find this U.S. missile test here. Let's see if I could pull that up for you. I am a little clunky tonight because it's been a long time since I've live streamed. This totally looks like propaganda to me. Lockheed. We got some more CGI, so again, it's like you got the Soviets versus the US with the CGI. But there's the actual missile being tested. Actual video, not CGI. Now, we don't know if that is the real missile, but nonetheless, you're getting something. Okay, now we go back to the CGI. So there's a new arms race, is my point. And the new arms race is in space, my friends. Space. And there's crazy stuff up there. If they have nothing, then why would they tell us they have something? Furthermore, why would we have Lockheed Martin and the U.S. Air Force releasing actual videos of weapon tests of these missiles that are being launched from fairly large planes? I mean, the simplest explanation is that you can haul more ordnance by keeping it afloat forever because it's got nuclear warheads in it, so let's just nuclear power the thing. Right? That doesn't seem like that would be any stretch of the imagination. But I'm going to tell you something. I've got a book, and it is a factual book. It's written by Anatoly Zak, and he is a specialist in the history of space exploration. He's from Russia, so this is all propaganda, I'm sure. But he attended a Russian Moscow State University. He earned a journalism degree in Syracuse, New York, at Syracuse University. And he is basically published a book that is Russia in Space, the Past Explained, the Future Explored by Anatoly Zak. And in this book, what he does is he details out the history using actual documentation, using actual projects that were referred to in Russia behind the Iron Curtain, and talks all about what the Russians' plans were for exploring Mars and the Mars base. Actual working hardware. Does the gun have real bullets or blanks? Good question. Now, I'm giving you some things to think about, some extra things that David Wow Wilcock and Corey the Insider's Insider Good and all these other clowns are not telling you. They're just telling you, oh, yes, I know everything. It's the whole world. But they really don't talk about these other countries. What I'm saying is, in the same way that the U.S. had plans that logistically they could have built and staffed a moon base by 1966 in that level of technology, what I'm telling you is that in looking at the actual data, the actual documentation from the Russian Mars studies that reached the red planet in 1960. There it is, right there. The OKB-1. They've been interested in these other planets for a long time. Why? They mapped out weather. They mapped out everything. Now, I'm not going to make the logical leap because it would be a logical fallacy and say, oh, the Russians are on Mars. No, but they could have gotten there. They could have gotten there, and the U.S. depends at this point in time, until SpaceX gets their act together, the U.S. depends on the Russians for rides up and back and forth from the International Space Station. Furthermore, here's another fact for you. The Russians have threatened to pull out of the International Space Station by the year 2020. That's, as I speak today, less than 2 years from today. And then there was another article that said that the Russians were threatening to pull out of the ISS project by 2024. Both data points, both reports, even if they're propaganda, coincided with one common link, that they were going to partner with China and build their own. Now, where do we go with that? Propaganda. Well, then, if that's propaganda, than the recent administrator of NASA coming out and talking about how he wants to help build gateways that are in a perfect orbit around the planet Earth, that private companies, everything would be available on the web, and private companies could put something up there in the gateway and they can build ships, and then they could use that to jump to, and I don't mean jump like Andrew Bishago jump gate. What I mean is they could use a gateway to build a ship outside of the gravitational pull of Earth in this gateway workshop. It's basically an elaborate workshop. And then they could use that to go to the moon and build a moon base. And then they would have another gateway orbiting the moon, which they could then use that gateway as a larger workshop to build for a mission to Mars. And Athlete 1976 is the fitness captain, Jason Fitness Captain Esty. And the mighty Professor Fez says there's an idea race for sure, but actual working hardware, I guess nobody can take the chance. Does the gun have real bullets or blanks? And that's a good point. Let me show you something if I can find it. Okay. See, I find all this weird stuff in my travels. Did you know that there was a Soviet space pistol? It was called the TP-82. And the TP-82 is currently in a museum in St. Petersburg, Russia. It's a combination gun. It was in service from 1986 to 2007. It was designed by Igor Skrilev, and it held 5.45 by 39 millimeter cartridges and 12.5 by 70 shotgun shells. And this particular pistol, I'm totally screwing up my screen here, my apologies. This particular pistol was triple barreled, and it was carried by cosmonauts on space missions. See if I can do this again. I apologize. So the U.S., it's kind of like Stephen Greer. The U.S. secret space program or whatever is totally peaceful. They don't need to worry about any of this kind of stuff. But the Soviets, the Russians were. And that's the space pistol that they were using. 86 to 2007. It was called the TP-82. TP-82. Check it out. It was carried by cosmonauts on space missions. It was intended as a survival aid to be used after landings and before recovery in the Siberian wilderness. However, you never know. There's a lot of things floating around in space, like Professor Fez says, a lot of minerals and construction material floating around. I mean, it is a prospecting race for wealth, and a lot of that debris. How do you think they're going to clean up the debris? The easiest way to clean up any of the space debris that's out there, ladies and gentlemen, is to scrap it, is to salvage it and use it for their own means, isn't it? I mean, that's just the smartest, reasonable, rational thing to me. Instead of blasting all this stuff up there in orbit, why don't we use the stuff we already got? See? So what I'm saying is there's something more to this, and there's the reason why the Soviets are being so secretive about this stuff, and this stuff only shows up in weird little museums, and you really don't hear much about it. Like I said, this has been classified for a number of years, and you only find out about it in these books. And yeah, it might be conceptual, but there was a growing resistance in the Ministry of Defense to the financial burden of non-military rocket projects in the early months of 1961 in the Soviet Union. And there were critical government decisions that basically stalled the effort to go to the moon and canceled any real hopes of reaching Mars. But all that was already negotiated. All of that stuff in the Soviet Union was already planned out. They just supposedly kiboshed it at the last minute. Korolev's team, a guy by the name of Korolev, they've already signed the paperwork. They tested the Vostok spacecraft that was going to be used for the historic first manned orbital mission. And 2 months after Yuri Gagarin's triumphant flight on April 12, 1961, the government directed OKB-1, the Mars space orbiter, to cease development of manned spacecraft for flyby missions to Mars and Venus and for expeditions to the surfaces of the Moon, Mars, and Venus, and also killed similar proposals by Chelomey. And they postponed their heavy launch vehicles. However, even though these missions were officially canceled, Korolev allowed studies to continue. Why? Because they were looking into prospecting. They were looking into developing electric engines and having nuclear reactors run them. And this was summer of 1962. So they had already done studies way back in the 60s, the Soviets, of how they could grow crops on the planet Mars. And again, my source, if you want to know, check me out. I'm not going to read the whole book to you. Anatoly Zak, Russia in Space. The Past Explained, the Future Explored. Okay, and this is the latest version. I'll give you the year. It's all detailed out. It's 1971. I'm sorry, 2014 with the updated illustrations. And if you want to look, I mean, they've got, look, this is not a CGI graphic, my friends. This is a test vehicle. They have built this. This is not theory, not concept. Now you could say, oh yeah, Joe, well, that's, molded plastic or whatever. That's fine. But if that's going to be molded plastic, then any of the shuttle designs that you see in the museums could also be molded plastic. It's totally irrelevant to the point I'm trying to make. So the other thing is that they were trying to build, the plan was way back then, and I apologize about these photos, but I'm doing the best I can here for you. Look, this was their concept. This is what they were trying to build. A little craft that could store lots of crew, get the crew out of Earth's orbit and onto one of these gateways. Glass made on the moon would be stronger than tempered steel due to having no oxygen molecules in it. And check this one out. Even Project Horizon, the U.S. Army's project to build a lunar base and have it manned by 1966. The Horizon project, ladies and gentlemen, was planning on building concrete structures based out of lunar dust and water that they mined from the ice on the moon. They could easily do that. And you're going to say, well, how would they defeat the radiation? Okay, here's how they would defeat the radiation. They would cover up their base structures, their tubes, and their rockets. That would be the core of their base structure. And they would lay them horizontal in the lunar soil and then cover it up with lunar soil. I think they said about 8 to 12 feet of lunar soil would protect that from meteorites, dust, as well as any kind of radiation. 1966. Russians said they could do it in 62. Secret of Everything says, yeah, I agree about some of the Mars stuff too. Do you guys think there are tons of U.S. bases? I don't think there are tons. What I think is reasonable and rational is that we are now hearing about these drones, right? I mean, a lot of this stuff is, even the Russians have developed drone technology. Let me pull that up for you and I'll show you that. You guys, I have been so deeply dug into this, and I was going to make a really nice, presentable video for you, and I said, screw this. I've got an account on Twitch. Let's go live and say hi to the folks out there and show you what I found, right? And we'll just kind of do it like a live stream, because YouTube, in case you're tuning in, YouTube banned me from live streaming until October 22nd. So gosh only knows when I'm actually going to live stream again. But anyway, I want to show you this little thing here. If I can find the gosh darn thing. All right. Okay, here we go. So this one is from CNN Money, the criminal news network. And I'll show that to you. Make it a little bit bigger for you. People say, well, why is it that, you know, you're doing a live stream? Because I want to. I don't feel like making an edited video. It's not worth my time. Okay, watch this. Look at this thing. Does it look clunky? Yeah. But is it real? Look. Code 2. I mean, so this is what, to me, is much more reasonable and rational if you think about it. They're developing drone technology. We've already been told that. That's not a theory. That's real. Now, they develop these robots, right? So instead of sending humans through the Van Allen radiation belts, instead of having to weigh down, 4,400 pounds of radiation shielding for a human capsule, they just have one of these VR-controlled robots instead of your NASA Curiosity rover. And they could do, if they have 12 of these gosh darn things, they can build anything they want. They said, we are creating AI, not Terminator. And the Russian agency, and you know they don't confirm anything, they confirm this is valid. So, again, more facts and evidence. If it's propaganda, that's fine. Then that's all we have to go off of is propaganda. But then if we say, oh, well, it's just propaganda, then we don't need to have a broadcast. If it's all fake, we can shut down the stream right now because it's all ridiculousness. So do I want to do that? No. The purpose of this video is to put some things together using reason, logic, and common sense. Now, Secret of Everything says, but we do know a lot of NASA is total green screen and wire BS. Of course, they mess around with technology all the time. Yeah, they do. And why? Does the fact that NASA has been caught green screening and faking, and they also have a duplicate rover on one of their broadcasts, NASA was shown. They said, we've got a duplicate rover. Everything that we do on the rover on Mars, we do on this rover here on Earth to make sure it'll work. Right? So why would a public agency that used to be classified military space, why would a public agency use green screen and fake robots and all that kind of stuff? It's because space is fake? Well, that's the subject of another video. But assuming that space is real, which I do, then they would do that for propaganda purposes. And then your commentary is that the hat's ridiculous. It looks like I have ponytails. Really? Oh, yeah. Maybe I should. Again, I want to thank Boris for this. This is authentic Russian space technology, comrade. Now, it's got a little mic on it. It's kind of cool. But the mighty Professor Fez says that's the point. Can the risk be taken that it's not real? And that's where I'm coming from. And I think that any reasonable analyst, and I would consider myself to be at the level of research that I feel like I'm getting into, I would definitely consider myself to be less of a conspiracy theorist or even a researcher and more of a conspiracy analyst. Like, I'm looking at this from a meta-analysis standpoint, and I fully recognize that some of the details might be off by looking at that whole forest or looking at that whole landscape and not seeing each individual tree. I get that. Buggy187 says, I was watching a video today about DARPA having the tech that enabled people to control 3 jets with their mind. DARPA's been working on underground stuff, space stuff, in coordination with civilian as well as military agencies. They absolutely have, and they even have DARPA even has a podcast, for crying out loud. Don't believe me? Okay, let me show you some evidence of that. Show me your evidence. Watch this. Here we go. You should subscribe to DARPA. They've got more subscribers than Joe from the Carolinas. For good reason. They've got better information. Okay. Here we go. Voices from DARPA. 101,000 subscribers. Hell, DARPA just got a silver play button on YouTube. Of course, we're on Twitch tonight because YouTube has banned me from live streaming for whatever reason. The Conquistador, the AI intermediary. This was from 5 months ago. 3 tours of duty as a DARPA program manager, including his latest tour with the agency's Information Innovation Office. Throughout his DARPA service, David has combined his training and interest in computer science and psychology in ways that have extended the boundaries of artificial intelligence technology, both for warfighters and the public. Now, and listen to this. He managed a portfolio of AI projects, including the Command Post of the Future program. And his program led to Siri, the most famous virtual personal assistants. So I ask you, do you think that it's possible, it's perhaps reasonable and rational, that either the U.S. and or the Russians have enough drone and remote sensing, and I mean not like, ooh, remote viewing, I mean remote sensing technology today in 2018 to conduct completely human-free drone remote missions on the surface of the moon and on the surface of Mars or anywhere in between? And I would venture to say that, yes, they do. As evidenced by the civilian programs show us pictures, even if they're fake. The bottom line is that's what they want us to think. So using that logical anchor point, they got them, and they can do this. And the next thing is, Secret to Everything says, you do crack me up. I've laughed so hard listening to some of your videos, I've had to pull over. Please pull over if I'm busting a gut that way. And you like how sarcastic I am. And pretty good for a Twitch stream. I want to welcome all the 19 people and appreciate the 48 views here. And thank you. Okay, so we're continuing along here. Now I'm going to take this headset off because, as you can see, I'm out of contact now with Sovietsky communication command. So just give me a minute here. I'm going to bring back the infamous hair. All right. But thank you again, Boris, for the beautiful communications headset. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to take this 5-pin. I'm trying to find an adapter for this 5-pin jack. So this way I can plug that into my mixing board, and that way the ears and the mic will be active, and I might even be able to broadcast from this. But anyways, again, I'm very humbled by this. And people have asked, let me see here, manned craft. I wonder if they've explored far out into space with unmanned drones. Well, they certainly have. And you're wondering who's on my shirt. My buddy Vince actually gave me this shirt. He went to Russia on vacation, and in the Black Sea, I'm going to move this mic up. He was like, oh, Joe's into like all this weird secret space stuff. So the SSSR, you know, CCCP is SSSR, and it's Yuri Gagarin, who is allegedly the first man in space. That is, the first man to survive Russia's missions in the space. There's theories going that the Italian, there were some Italian brothers who caught some of the test flights with the test cosmonauts that died and burned up on the way down before Gagarin got up there and got back safely, which, hey, I wouldn't put it past them. I'm drinking coffee tonight. As always, it's either coffee or filtered rainwater. So my point here is that I think that it is reasonable and rational to conclude that the militaries have space programs that, even if it is dangerous and not in that old rocket technology, that is kind of not feasible to put men, women, whoever into space because of the radiation. You know, it's heavy radiation shielding. It's totally reasonable that they've got probes out there. I mean, if civilians have probes out there for space exploration, why wouldn't the military? Oh, well, they couldn't do it. I would venture to actually argue with against you on that. The military's got the kill switch, folks. When 9/11 happened, okay? When 9/11 happened, what happened to the phone system? Those of us that were wee little tykers back in, there was no phone system. It was out. Cell phones didn't work. All planes were grounded. Somebody has a kill switch. Bottom line. So if the military had a kill switch way back in 2001, then what makes you think they don't have a kill switch today? So if they need to cover up a program or what have you, they can do that. They can just fire up the social engineering networks, you know, all the social engineering networks, throw out a bunch of garbage, and everybody's going to be watching their screens, and nobody's going to be looking up in the sky. Instead, what's going to happen is everyone's going to be like this. Don't you love that when people are like driving down the street and you see they're driving drunk, and we're looking at our little what do they call those things in Star Trek? Those Star Trek communicators? Help me out in the chat room. Telecorders? Is that what they are? I don't know. But anyway, everyone's just kind of conditioned now, social engineering, to like look down. Tricorder. Thank you very much, Professor Fess. Yeah, everyone's looking in their tricorder now. We've been conditioned to look away from the sky. And that's not even to go into the idea of, if we believe some of this information that's coming out of the To the Stars Academy of farts and schmiances, or appliances, if any of that's real, then it's entirely possible that DARPA, the military, etc., have developed cloaking technology. As an example, and if you want to, for instance, on that, you want to challenge me that they don't have cloaking technology, I would just cite Robert Guffey's book, Cameleo, A True Story. Okay? And if you check it out. Robert Guffey's, Guffey, Robert Guffey's Cameleo. And he tells you the story about a dude who stumbled on a bunch of very high-end night vision goggles, who ended up getting what amounts to being gang stalked. He was being followed by military intelligence, and they were invisible. But he was able to see what the hell was going on, and he wasn't crazy because he had these night vision goggles. So he'd be looking in cars, and they're like, okay, we got to get these goggles back from this guy. This is a national security risk where we stored these things. Somebody stumbled onto them. And, you look in a car and you see movement, but the dang inside of the car moved, but nobody looks like they're in there. But you get this little goggle and light it up, and there's somebody sitting in there with this material over them. Where's my material? Let me show you something. This here is EMF weave. It's a silver weave fabric. And so what this is designed to do, I know it doesn't look like much, but you can find it on Amazon. It's god-awful expensive is what it is. But this material is designed to prevent electromagnetic frequencies from going through it. So electromagnetic radiation cannot penetrate silver weaved fabric. So what you do is you take a cell phone or you take a router and you wrap it up in this stuff, and so it just cannot be used. The waves don't escape the packaging. It's kind of like a really nice way to shield everything in the moment. And so what I do is, because I'm concerned about the effect of wireless communication and this kind of stuff on health, because I've seen way too many solid tumors from people on the same side of the head where they've worn these, cell phone little things in their ears for years. And so what I do is I shield myself from routers and different Wi-Fi technologies in a preventive way. Not because I'm paranoid, but because I've actually read the studies that have come out of the cell phone and router companies, and I've read all that little warning stuff in that little book that you throw away. I've read all that stuff, and it's like, yeah, I'd rather be safe than sorry. My point is that you can use a technology like this and bounce anything off of it. I am using behind me a green sheet, right? I'm going to lift the mystery a little bit in the secret Russian space program. I'm using a green sheet in computer technology to make it look like I've got a spaceship in the Earth behind me. So to say that there are craft or there is some kind of technology that cannot do that with craft or people or anything else or objects is totally irrational. So, yeah, it's Faraday fabric is what it is, Gina says. So I'm going down the rational secret space program component here, but what I'm using as the springboard is Russia, my friends. Right? Privyet. Because they were ahead of the Americans, and their butts have been so quiet that you really don't know anything coming out of there. But by 2007, the Russian government had decided to abandon Soyuz upgrades in favor of developing an entirely new spacecraft. Look at this thing. Sorry about the glare. Again, I'm trying to figure this gosh darn thing out. Elon Musk is the alien. Hey, Brandon Art, welcome to the broadcast. And I am in space. I'm in hyperspace, as the case may be. And they were talking about lunar tourists. As late as 2007, there was a Russian company that displayed a mock-up of the lunar Soyuz capsule attached to the stage descended to the moon. And this particular mock-up had logistics, habitation, and provided extra comfort to the fee-paying tourists on their journey. And they said if private funding could be raised for such a mission, it might jumpstart the development of the next generation of spacecraft. I mean, look, the Russians, folks, this is the APAS-95 docking port that they built for this program. A docking port for a large ship, not for space shuttles. Why? There's an old saying that you don't put on a shirt unless you want to go outside. You don't spend millions of dollars, especially with the Russian economy, the Russian ruble economy or whatever the heck else they're using over there. You don't spend money on a docking port unless you need to put that docking port to good use because you've got something to send that docking port out there, put it on something that needs to be there, and then connect it. There's a reason for that. Just because they're Russians and they're supposed to be the enemy of the U.S. doesn't mean that they're stupid. It doesn't mean that they lack intelligence. Buggy187 says, what I wonder is if they have the ability to reach space without using decades-old technology or rockets. If they do, they're not telling us. We're getting clues that they do. As an example, you have the Nazi Bell, the Glock technology that was discussed through the literature coming out of World War II Germany. And that was legit. It killed a lot of people. There was, even the scientists that were around reading the source material. I'll show you that. See, we're going to cite some sources today, but I have to walk away for a second. Now, this Polish guy, his name is Igor Witkowski, wrote a book, okay, good book. It's called The Truth About the Wunderwaffe, and it details the World War II German military and all of their different secret technologies that they were working on, some of which worked really well and some of which were just dreadful failures. One of the technologies that he discusses in this book, using source materials. The dude lived in Poland, okay, so he had access to all the source materials that you might find in the Wolf's Lair. And the Wolf's Lair, for those of you that don't know, was a underground facility, a partial above and underground facility in Poland, which the Wolf's Lair is where Hitler and a lot of his generals hid out. And I actually have been there. And so when you go into the Wolf's Lair, it's all concrete. And if you look up, they have this kind of camouflage netting above the entire facility, so it breaks it up from airstrikes. It looks just like a mountain above if you look at it from above. Well, my point is that in these facilities, you know, there were plans that were not burned or destroyed. This is back in World War II. So we're talking about, look at some of these technologies. They're talking about photon. This is World War II Germany. These are actual photon absorbers and photon and electron shooting technology. Real machines. These are not drawings. They are real machines. You know, and then they talk about the Glock, the Bell, that could do some weird levitation stuff that killed a lot of the scientists that were working on those projects. And if you don't believe me, the name, you look it up, Spanner 1 and Spanner 2A. They were electrical currents that were conducting electrical current in the form of a semiconductor. It was crystal in the appropriate chemical element and 2 electrodes. I'm sorry that Twitch isn't working for you. I deeply apologize. I wish I could be on YouTube for you all tonight. I really do. But, you know, YouTube hasn't looked at my appeal. So what I'll do is I will try to take this and post it on YouTube and see if they get me for that, since I won't actually be live. Now, my point is, though, that if the Germans were utilizing and looking at semiconductors in World War II, we know that the United States was testing all kinds of nuclear weapons. I mean, if we know about Castle Bravo, yeah, the Castle Bravo, the first nuclear test, and Project Argus, which Olev Phillips, I believe, talks about in his book. The Project Argus was basically, hey, listen, we think that we could build a ICBM shield to protect the U.S. from the Soviets, and the way that we can do that is if we throw up into the atmosphere a bunch of nuclear weapons and explode them, and it'll create all of these different ion and electron activity and form an artificial band of, like, a mini version of the Van Allen radiation belts around Earth. So if the Soviets launch an ICBM up, that this band that we've created will explode any of the ICBMs, therefore preventing them from even going anywhere near U.S. airspace. That was called Project Argus. It was a miserable failure. It didn't work the way that they wanted it to, but that was a DARPA project in sync with the Atomic Energy Commission. Nowadays, you folks call the Atomic Energy Commission what? The Department of Energy. I'm just saying. Argus, A-R-G-U-S. I don't know why I remember these little things, but my point is, they were testing this stuff. The original atomic blasts that were going on in the United States, which, by the way, just, to make you all feel real safe, secure, and sound, because, if you can't trust your government, who can you trust? Wherever you live. It's not unique to the U.S. If you can't trust your government, who can you trust? Well, yeah. Do you know that the U.S. government, when they first started their Castle Bravo and all those nuclear tests, they did not know what was going to happen. They thought that they really screwed up and literally destroyed the entire atmosphere of the Earth when the first one went off in where? New Mexico. Area 51, huge nuclear bombs going off all over the place. Nevada, the Nevada test site. I've been there too. Ain't something you want to repeat, let me tell you that. It's nothing out there. But it's dang hot. So yeah, they didn't know what was going to happen when they blew off the first nuclear bomb. It was just a theory. And you know what? The dang bomb blew bigger than they thought. And they're like, oh gosh, we really messed this up. And they're watching this thing go up and everybody's by the shielding. And they've got these poor pigs dressed up in soldiers' uniforms to see using a live pig. I'm not making this up, folks. To use live pigs to figure out how poorly or how well that camouflage or surplus material would shield the pigs from the burns from the nuclear radiation so they could figure out what would be the best kind of material to use in uniforms for the soldiers. Okay? I mean, these people are nutcases. So you want to tell me they're not trying to do stuff out in space with robots? Heck, who knows how many little skeletons are out there in space that we haven't been told about? I'm just saying. You know, like, let's use some reason, logic, and common sense. As I say in my edited videos, follow the logic. Are you out there? Yeah, you're out there. I could see you. All right, let me grab a sip of water. Actually, I'm going to grab some coffee. We are being distracted and we are being fooled and we are being led away from thinking about what is currently possible within the unknown, secret, hidden, clickbait title world of secret or classified space programs, not only in Russia and not only in China, not only in Korea, yeah, Korea, they have a spaceport too, but also in these United States. Do you really think, let me ask you this, folks, do you really think that the controllers, the so-called controllers of the world, are going to allow private companies to mine whatever minerals are on the moon or on asteroids or whatever else? Do you really think that the governments and these psychopaths that are in control are going to let private companies mine that first? Dick Cheney came out when he was in rulership, and he was basically like, yeah, look, you know, we really want to mine H3, helium-3 from the moon. They were talking about patents and figuring out how are we going to apportion land? How are we going to divvy all this stuff up? I thank you, Bug. I thank you for, and follow the money too. The problem is we've got missing trillions. Where did it go? Well, I'm going to tell you, you know where I think the missing trillions went? I think the missing trillions went into classified projects. I think a lot of the missing trillions went into weapons programs, research programs, artificial intelligence, military supercomputers, not only CIA, DIA, NRO, that's another one for you. And I also think that a lot of that missing trillions went into figuring out how to repurpose materials from off of this planet. And I want to tell you something else. Am I giving y'all too much? I have a feeling sometimes these live streams, I go on and on and on, and nobody actually ends up tuning in. You got to give me some feedback. Are y'all enjoying this, or should we close down? You getting tired? I don't know. I'm okay, but I don't want to keep y'all if you got stuff to do. Okay, I'm good. Okay, cool. Thank you. You can do a lot of bad things with trillions and get away with it. Yeah, you sure could. All right, I'm gonna tell it. I'm gonna keep on going. So I have been throwing this stuff around in my mind, and I have been thinking and thinking and thinking, and it's like there's absolutely stuff going on up there that we don't know about. There has to be. And we'll find out about it. But look, if you think about the space program, okay, the Apollo missions, people say, well, they were faked. Okay? People say, no, they weren't faked because I saw it on TV at the time. Good. What if both are true? What if NASA had a mock-up of the entire Apollo mission? What if they had a mock-up of the landing site of the moon just in case the feed went down? Okay? And they did. They did have a mock-up. So, oh, I'm sorry, you need some proof about that too. Let me pull that up for you. Here we go. Everybody wants to say, where's your evidence? So I'm going to show you the evidence. Show me the evidence. I will show it to you. And not in the defensive or, I'm not saying, oh, you show me the evidence. No, I'm like, let's see some evidence here. They had a mock-up of this thing. These guys practiced like there's no tomorrow, because if they were all the way out at the moon, 200-some thousand miles away, all of these ex-military guys knew what it meant to practice. Look. There's their mock-up. There's Armstrong and Aldrin. Buzz Aldrin's turned into kind of a bizarre guy, hasn't he? Right? And Michael Collins, the poor guy, had to orbit the gosh darn moon the whole time, never got to set foot on there. The unsung hero of the Apollo missions, if you ask me. So they had a mock-up. They practiced ahead of time. They had all this kind of stuff. And so what I'm saying is, we are being shown contingency plans if the actual mission doesn't look right or doesn't go off well. Because that's part of the propaganda too. Part of the propaganda is that our government space program is perfect and never has any failures. And what happened to Elon Musk? Speaking of Elon Musk, what happened to Elon Musk's SpaceX at first? Rockets blew up on the pad. Right? Anybody remember that UFO or bird or bug or, for bugs? Anybody remember all that stuff that went by the first SpaceX flight or the second one that was actually going to get it up into orbit? And all the flat earth people out there were like, oh, that's proof that space doesn't exist. No, it's proof that that technology was being actively shown to have a problem with it. Why? Because they were not ready for a private company to go into space by itself and start reporting back. How do I know that? Well, who ended up getting a contract with the U.S. Air Force Space Command at Vandenberg Air Force Base? Oh yeah, SpaceX. Right? The X-47B, that secret little mini shuttle that goes up there for 2 years that the Air Force has. It's a drone. For 2 years, they are using drones in space to explore, and they're not telling us any gosh darn thing. Anything that comes out of any of these public sources is filtered. Give us the raw data. And no, this anti-gravity argument and stuff, I'm sure that they do have things like that. There is way too much articles that you could find in mainstream physics that is looking at gravity wave technology. And because of that, it would just lead my closed-minded, biased scientific brain to think, why are they looking and analyzing gravity waves unless they're trying to take advantage of them? Yeah, Bond did it. There's landing hoaxes all over the place. In Diamonds in Forever, Professor Fez says, what do I think the X-47B does? Well, I'm going to tell you what I think the X-47B does. Y'all are going to hate me for this one. Here's what I think the X-47B does. I think that the X-47B is in a fairly stable, far-out orbit around planet Earth. And I think that the X-47B is a relay satellite that's used to communicate with other classified deep space probes that they currently have that we're not told about. That's what I think it's for. You go up there and sit up there for 2 years, and you tell me that this particular craft, this satellite's looking at the Earth? For what? No. Okay. More on this secret Russian space program. In 2008, the Russians and Europeans did studies, and they called the RKK Energia, and they outlined a typical lunar mission scenario, and it was largely retained in the preliminary design of the PTK-NP craft, and they mapped it all out for you. They needed this to happen. There's your orbits. That's how they were going to do it. There's your craft. If I could see that. They had your orbiter, lunar orbiter. They had your lunar lander. They have us thinking that they are looking out. You're going to say they didn't build it. Horse pucky. What do you call that? That is a built cargo engine. Okay? There's a cargo module, I'm sorry. Storage room. Why did they build that? Well, they built it to send up satellites. No, because that's the actual 23 cubic meters of volume for this thing was not set up for satellites. It was set up for a 6.01 meter body length. It had dry cargo. It had up to 0.80 tons in water in portable containers. It had propellant and refueling. It had water in its delivery system tanks. It had gas for the habitation compartments and propellant for the internal propulsion system. Approximate development cost, 10,000 million rubles as of 2010. But don't let me convince you. I'm just reading this from the same guys that built the gosh darn docking rings for this stuff. And I've already cited my source on this. This is a docking ring that was specifically built for the PTKS lunar mission from Russia. 2008. Don't know what happened to it. I'm sure it was canceled. Okay. Now you're going to say, yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, right. Let me show you something else. This is going to blow your mind. This is going to blow your mind in the same way it blew my mind for those that don't know about this. And probably a lot more than it would blow Joe Rogan's mind, because Joe Rogan has his mind blown about everything. Whoa! Space? Whoa, whoa. Okay. Let me see if I can find it now that I've opened my big mouth. Okay, this is classified, was classified. It was created by a agency of the U.S. government that most people didn't know about, and it was called the Manned Orbiting Laboratory. It was a U.S. military space station. Okay, let's take a look at this ancient technology. And the reason I'm doing this is not to bore you to tears. The reason why I'm doing this is to give you a presentation that's more than just my words. I'm trying to show you proof, evidence that is a chain of things, that is not just half-cocked conspiracy theories. Okay. Now, we've already talked about how they could have a, the technology at least, to have a moon base, right? By 1966, a manned moon base. Well, here's the Manned Orbiting Laboratory. It was first announced in December of 1963. Photo credit, NRO, that's National Reconnaissance Office. Look at some more pictures. Manned Orbiting Laboratory. It was an early space station. It operated from, look at this. This is space.com. I'm not making this up. The Manned Orbiting Laboratory operated for more than 5 years and spent $1.56 billion in 1969 dollars. That would have equated to $130 billion. There was also a political perception that the Manned Orbiting Laboratory duplicated what NASA was doing with its human spaceflight program. Folks, military classified space program. Wake up. Wake up and smell the coffee. All these conceptual visions and stuff. Let me make myself smaller again so you can see this. This is not theory. It was going to fit on a Titan rocket and be serviced by astronauts on the Gemini space capsules. Military space station. There were people in this gosh darn thing. Well, that's what they say. They say before it was canceled. Oh, no, we wouldn't actually be building one of these things. I mean, this wasn't actually put into play. This was just conceptual, right? You know, these particular graphics, these pictures from the National Reconnaissance Office were approved for release in July of 2015. Do you see why I'm getting excited? Look at this. Again, you don't put on a coat unless you're going to go outside. They're doing precise machining. They were doing test flights of these gosh darn things. They were figuring out how to dock it with the Gemini B. Inside the capsule, they had it all ready to go, ready to rock and roll. It was military, and this was classified until 2015. At least these pictures were. Training the astronauts. Again, approved for release 1st of July 2015. So, look at these guys. You see those spacesuits anywhere? Do those look like NASA spacesuits to you? Oh, no, they're training suits. Right. Have you ever seen those training suits before? Because that's what they had in the 1960s. These pictures were taken during the training missions for the MRO in the 1960s. And the guy, after the MOL was canceled, about half of the astronauts transferred to NASA. Among them was Bob Crippen, who eventually flew in the first space shuttle mission in 1981. So you tell me, is it reasonable and rational and logical to think that there's a military space program today? Absolutely. Declassified 2015. In operation 1960s. The astronauts that were on the Manned Orbiting Laboratory mission. And we can argue whether it actually flew or not. The bottom line is, you've got the pictures. The bottom line is, we have confirmation of the movement of a military astronaut in a classified program who then flew on the first U.S. space shuttle mission. So I ask you this. You think it's possible that the Russians had or have a perhaps more refined and developed program by now, considering how secretive they are? I'm just saying. I'm not trying to challenge you. I am looking at this from a skeptical standpoint. I don't think we need to worry about believing in aliens and stuff I'm not saying they don't exist, but you don't need to depend on extraterrestrials when all the evidence is right here in front of you. Connect the dots. Mind blown. You want to see something else? I'm going to show you a what's called a space tug, a Hercules space tug design that was powered by a nuclear reactor unit according to, again, the RKK Energia program circa 1982. There's a schematic. Radiation shielding, docking port, all that good stuff. Electric engine array. You're going to say, yeah, but that's just a mock-up, isn't it? Okay. Well, what do you think this is, Chief? What do you think that is? It's an EU-305 high vacuum experimental unit that was used to test a liquid metal cooling system for space-based nuclear reactors. Russia. Why are we testing cooling systems for nuclear reactors in space if it's all science fiction? Huh? Do you see what I mean? Just follow the logic. And I need to say at this point that I do not and have never worked for any government or private sector company that has access to any classified information. I have never been exposed to my knowledge of to any classified information, and I have never taken any oaths. I've not signed any documents, and I've never been told about any classified information, technology, or individuals involved in any classified programs. I'm just your average dumb country bumpkin down here on the farm, connecting some dots and putting together information that has been declassified based on actual Freedom of Information Act requests and is available in commonly available books, magazines, periodicals, and websites. But I have an inkling of the metadata and to be able to link these things together. And I'm going to tell you that nothing of what I'm saying tonight, if you notice, none of what I'm saying tonight to you in this presentation, this kind of informal presentation, has anything to do with William Tompkins, extraterrestrials, or any blue chicken, or, you know, Q this or Z that or whatever. Now, you know what this, gosh, you know what this is? This is JAnon is what this is. JAnon. You don't need to believe. Show you the evidence. Make your own decision. Don't believe squat. You don't have to have faith. In the JAnon movement, all you need to do is read the gosh darn books. It's hidden right there for you. Space tugs. What was the concept of a space tug? Circa 2009. Well, they needed to jumpstart studies in the field of nuclear reactors in space. They studied a modestly sized power unit for unmanned, robotic, deep space probes. The St. Petersburg Arsenal, which manufactured the existing, current tense, existing nuclear-powered satellites, also continued research in this field. Around that time, in 1999, the Keldysh Center conducted the Mars 21 study to evaluate various solar power and propulsion technologies, including an electrically powered unit delivering 15 megawatts and a 50 megawatt nuclear powered unit. 2006 Russian documents revealed the latest configuration of the nuclear space tug. It was a tugboat that was powered by a nuclear reactor for space. What was it going to pull? Do you see what I mean? What's the purpose of a tug in space? It was called the Reusable Interorbital Tug. It's right here. I need to figure out how to read Russian so I can read the source materials. Let me see if it'll get it. It'll even get on the screen for you. It's right here. I'm sorry. It's, oh man, it's so blurry. There you go. It was dubbed MMB right there. Whatever in the hell that says. Cyrillic alphabet. I will learn to read Russian. Gosh darn it. I want to know if they're lying to me about the translations. People want to know what my channel is. And I'm going to type that in the chat right here. Joe from the Carolinas on YouTube.com. And I also have at Joe from Carolina on Twitter. So I'd encourage you, if you like this, to follow me also on Twitter. Some people ask how they can support me, and I do have a Joe from the Carolinas Patreon.com page. You can find that if you're interested, and if you're not, you're not. And then this program's always free to consume. It's certainly not free to produce. Okay, so the first MMB mission. Oh yeah, they actually had this thing going, the nuclear-powered space tug, the Russians. They might not have been purty, but they had the gosh darn things ready to launch. They built the docking ports. They tell you that the ground testing was completed in 2015. Complete ground testing of the transport modules, including resource testing of the nuclear power and propulsion unit, as well as preparing for flight testing, was completed in 2018. The plan is sometime this year, next year, in 2020, that this frickin' space tug is going to be up there in space, launched as a prototype into orbit, and then be operational 2020 and beyond. Don't believe me? It's written right here. If I can focus the gosh darn thing. Oh, how much is it going to cost? In millions of rubles, right there. That's how much it's already cost them. Developmental costs for a space tug. So they can go anywhere they want. So it's not the craft. They've developed a craft, the Russians have. They've developed a nuclear-powered craft that can transport any smaller craft or any smaller pod anywhere they want, because it's nuclear-powered. Thank you. Am I there, DB Cisco? I'm not sure. I don't know DB Cisco. Let me get some more coffee. This makes a lot of sense to me. And see, so this is why you get this screw age and new age false secret space program stuff coming up. And that's why it's allowed, because none of these people were in any classified projects. These people are either knowing misinformants, they're active hoaxers and liars. And the reason why they're allowed to stay and have TV shows and come out and have conferences isn't because they're giving disclosure. It's because they're misdirecting you. It's like that video that I put out, my last video, where I told you, it's like, my theory is that even the TTSA, Tom DeLonge to the Stars Academy, or the Transportation Security Administration, whichever one you want to, choose there. It's either Gooberment or Gooberment, spook or spook, right? CIA. That's why they're able to say what they're able to say and come out with what they're coming out with. It's like, oh yeah, let's look in the dirt and let's look for some rocks and some, materials, and let's make everybody wait 20 years to find out whether Roswell actually happened or not. Oh, well, we really don't know. Meanwhile, the Russians are building space tugs by nuclear-powered craft. Okay? How about these electric engines? Surely they couldn't build any of those, right? It's all theoretical. Yeah, it was theoretical. Yep, thermal power was 3,500 kilowatts. And the specific impulse on these planned ionic electric engines were 7,000 seconds for the specific impulse, and the single engine was around 70 to 100 kilowatts. Source, A.S. Korotiv and others. And I don't even know how to pronounce this. I'll try. It's Projekti Sos Dania transportono in Russian. I'm not even going to try to butcher that anymore. My apologies to my Russian friends out there. In the academic world, in the serious conspiracy research world, or the serious secret space program world, we don't need to have these boundaries of countries and enemies. You know, we can be friends in our research, because what we're all trying to figure out is, what is the reality? Okay? So anyway, you're going to say, surely they couldn't have these engines already built. Oh, no. They don't have them built. They're testing them. Look at this. There you go. Oh. That's the only problem with books. There you go. Ionic engine being tested for the Russian space program. Ionic electric engine, 2011. Hello. See? Professor Fez says he knows people who worked for Lockheed. Yeah. Oh, here they are. Here's some more. Here's some more that aren't on. These will just fit on the ship, you know? I'm telling you. It's right out there. It's just people aren't looking. We're looking at the pretty pictures from Mars or wherever, and we're looking at at ridiculous YouTube misinformation and entertainment channels like Secure Team 10 and UFO Mania, and we're looking at little pareidolia symbols of skulls in, you know, rock from the Mars missions, and we're looking at little this and the sea rock. We're still conspiracy theories is still examining the sea rock on the quote-unquote faked Apollo moon mission. Meanwhile, the real deal is they're saying, hey, look, we got these ion engines. Now, you want a lunar version of a space tug? No problem. 2009, this sucker's going to last for 15 years. It runs on argon, nitrogen, and xenon. Right there. There's your design. Lunar MMB space tug. So what the Russians are doing with their secret space program plans is they are going to build these massive space tugs to take advantage of every power source they possibly can. So this way you can launch stuff and build stuff up there in space, and you won't have to worry about propelling it anywhere. We just built all these space tugs using materials that are found on Earth and that also can be mined on the moon and the asteroids. Now, I got another link in the chain for you. Get a load of this. Y'all are going to love this. Engineering. You wouldn't believe me if I just told you this. But I've only been studying this for, I'm not going to tell you how long I've been studying. It's too depressing. No, but I think that there is a value to this. And, you know, folks, if you do appreciate what I am doing for you, I would ask you to consider, supporting me on Patreon. But again, my content's free to consume. People have asked, so I set it up. Matter of fact, Artsy Dude out there on YouTube, Artsy Dude was the person who asked me to put up a Patreon page. What's your Patreon? I'm like, I didn't even think about it. Okay, what is NASA's asteroid redirect mission? This, by the way, is coming from nasa.gov. Okay, been looking this up. Just a little bit, just for fun. Now, it ended, right? Supposedly. But what they said was that NASA's developing a first-ever robotic mission to visit a large near-Earth asteroid, collect a multi-ton boulder from its surface, and redirect it into a stable orbit around the moon. Once it's there, astronauts will explore it and returned samples in the 2020s. This asteroid redirect mission, the ARM, is part of NASA's plan to advance the new technologies and I'm going to do the and spaceflight experience needed for a human mission to the Martian system in the 2030s. And I'm going to do my best Secure Team 10 impression, so that way this gets 4 million views. See if we can do that. I'm going to add some media. Whoops, now I'm getting locked up. See, I'm getting too far ahead of myself here. My apologies. We'll be right back in just a moment, as soon as my screen clears. So we have a military contractor controlling all the data in U.S. government. That's a serious problem. Sure is. And you're saying, no, we need to keep studying. This is essential for all of us. I think it is. Athlete 1976, as Fitz tells you, all the contracting paperwork that came out of Hood was blocked by Lockheed as well as many other agencies within the federal government. Yep. I really want to do my Secure Team 10 impression, though, for y'all while we continue to talk about this. Because I just think it's so funny. And I'm really looking forward to seeing actually some real original research coming out of Secure Team 10. Here's your nuclear electric tug for the expedition to Mars. This was circa 2011. The length was 58 meters. You remember those pictures of those real big, huge ships that were way out, and people said, oh, they were faked? They may have been faked, but there were certainly plans to build them. At least the Russians had those plans. 2009. Ion, propulsion, tugs. This is not classified. This is declassified. A space tug for Mars. The ultimate version of the MMB, that's that nuclear-powered tug, would require a nuclear reactor almost 3 times more powerful than the lunar version. They're developing a version for the moon, producing 22 to 24 megawatts of electricity. A pair of heavy RUS-M rockets, which they already have, would be required to launch the 2 60-ton sections of the 120-ton vehicle into the assembly orbit. They're not going to be launching that from Vandenberg Air Force Base. They're not going to be launching that from Cape Canaveral. They're going to be launching that from Siberia. A scaled-down version of the lunar tug could deliver cargo to Mars in advance of a manned spacecraft. A tug with a 1 megawatt power system and a departure mass of 40 tons could deliver, okay, here's the numbers, 15 to 17 tons into Martian orbit after a journey lasting 1.2 to 3 years. See what I'm saying? Not a theory. Fact. They've got the docking stations, they have the docking rings, they have the actual engines, they have the materials, they have the nuclear material, and they have the reactors. So you don't put on a coat unless you're getting ready to go outside. Now, do you? You want more? Well, they designed a interplanetary orbital spacecraft for the long trip to Mars. And this was actually designed in the 1980s, at least according to this book. Again, we're looking at Anatoly Zak, written, a guy who actually was studying the declassified Soviet space program white papers that were at Moscow University, Berlin. Here's your interplanetary orbital spacecraft. They called it the MOK because, you know, in Russian, I guess they had those different. Oh, yeah, those are just designs. Joe's gone completely crazy. No, I've not gone completely crazy. But these are the schematics. This was designed in the 1980s. I'm beginning to think that there was no solar warden. Honestly, I'm beginning to think that that did not exist. I think that that may have been put out there to shield Gary McKinnon from any further prosecution by making him look crazy. So we're going to say that we've got this, you know, solar warden thing. Here's your cover story, Gary. Don't talk about what you really saw. Come on, people. If that was really the greatest hack in U.S. history and he stumbled on some NASA stuff, right, and he just went into some websites, well, the Russians were working on nuclear-powered spacecraft in the 1980s, weren't they? And what's the highest classification stuff that is confirmed in the United States military? It's the nukes. Let me tell you, the U.S. government, they got a thing about classification with nukes. Where do they keep all their nuclear waste? We're not supposed to know that. Stop talking about it. There's deep underground military bases with reptilian aliens that want your adrenochrome that are going to eat you if you go into those deep underground bases. But we can't talk about nuclear waste, but we can talk about aliens. That's what I think's going on. In 2001, the Soviets already designed a manned mission to Mars, scoping out in detail what their landing system was going to look like, the stages of the landing system, manned with their lander. U.S. didn't do this. Oh, no, they never really actually designed any of this stuff, though, did they? Like, this was all just conceptual. Well, they designed an inflatable system that was designed to deliver probes to Mars that were carrying long-term seismic and climate monitoring sensors. Conceptual, right? That was going to be part of the manned Mars mission that the Soviets wanted. You tell me if this is a drawing. Right here. This. No. This is not a drawing, folks. They designed and built an inflatable system to deliver probes to Mars for seismic and climate monitoring. Look at that. Picture, not a drawing. Which also tells me that they've got the facilities on Earth to build this stuff. So let me ask you this. I mean, we're kind of getting into the weeds here. We're kind of getting into some details. But, you know, how would they design a Martian base? Oh, yeah, the Soviets already mapped that out, too. Did you know that? Yeah, the Soviets already figured that out. They've already got a plan. And we're not going to get into, does this look like a swastika? Because I think that that's a red herring as well. But look. Let me just get the focus right here. A Martian base assembly scenario. They mapped this stuff out. What is the line that we get from... They were going to cover it up with soil, right, to protect it. And they were going to have modules. They would have a logistics module and all this good stuff. Rocket propellants, base supplies, and every module would be 10 tons. Boom, 10 tons. What's Elon Musk doing? He's talking about modules. The nuclear power station... The nuclear power station on Mars would be delivered and deployed 1 kilometer from the base. It would be half buried in the soil and surrounded by a radiation barrier constructed using local materials. Prior to the power station coming online, the base would probably be powered by solar panels or smaller power generators. Yeah, and we've already Buggy 187 in the chat room says that Bigelow was talking about making inflatable habitats up there in space. Okay, so let's connect the dots. Factual dots. Bigelow is building inflatable habitats that everybody was saying, oh, we can't use those. Yeah. Just like that manned reconnaissance orbiter, right? Oh, yeah, it was just a theory. We didn't declassify that until 2015. It was active in the 1960s. The first military astronaut that was on that mission flew the first space shuttle mission in the civilian world, right? But it didn't exist. Shh. So what if we have an inflatable habitat that has no engines on it, like what Bug was saying in the chat room, and we attach an inflatable habitat to a Russian nuclear-powered space tug? Huh? Don't look at me. All I'm telling you is what I read in the papers. Nonfiction. I got to find that music again. I'm telling you, folks, don't get distracted by the ridiculousness that's coming out of these big-time corporations and all that kind of stuff, okay? Because the reality is a lot more interesting than all that stuff. It really is. That is way too loud. My apologies. I'm sorry. That's way too loud. Okay. We are not going anywhere. I'm just going to go ahead and let you know something. I'm going to do my little Secure Team 10 impersonation. And I'm not going to impersonate the computer voices that a lot of the other channels on YouTube are using because, I don't know how they have millions of subscribers, but we're on our way. I'm a real human being with a real voice looking at you, right there, you. If you like this, if you're on Twitch, if you're on YouTube, if you're on wherever the hell you're watching this or listening to this, just reach on down there and hit that subscribe and notification bell if you like this, if you appreciate this. And if you don't, give me a thumbs down, please. Okay. In 1962, the Soviets completed a long-duration Mars habitat test called OKB-124. Yeah. VP Legiosky, a young engineer at the OKB-124 Design Bureau that specialized in the development of life support systems, spent 15 days in a refurbished re-entry capsule. Dressed in a spacesuit, he endured temperatures intentionally elevated to 35 degrees centigrade. A year later, at the insistence of Sergei Korolev, the government approved the creation of the Institute of Medical and Biological Problems of Spaceflight, whose sole purpose was the development of procedures and technologies to enable humans to undertake long-duration missions in space. Before the new institute was up and running, Vladimir Chalomy began work on his Almaz space station project. This called for pairs of cosmonauts to perform military tasks on alternating 12-hour shifts during missions lasting 2 months. 1962-63. On June 28, 1966, 3 volunteers entered a cramped isolation chamber at the Military Institute of Aviation and Space Medicine to test the feasibility of such work. They spent 70 days in the 8-square-meter room, each working 2 4-hour shifts a day. They tested the sociological strength of the crew by playing abstract music of outlawed Soviet composers and reversing audio recordings. Contacts with their families were also banned until one of their 12-year-old daughters fell gravely ill and tragically died shortly thereafter. At the end of the experiment on September 6th, that was yesterday. Now, of course, this was back in 63. This wouldn't be 2018. 2 of the men were put into a centrifuge to simulate the physical stress of returning to Earth from a space station. Despite the involvement of the journalist on the experiment, the Soviet press did not report it until 6 months later, and even then described it as being preparation for underwater research. That was the cover story. Sorry if I'm cutting out. I'm going to cut that music. That's probably what it was. Was that seriously cut, or did we kind of solve that problem? Now, you guys want to see my channel grow? I can't do it. I've tried. I can't do it. It's up to you. Just share. Just share wherever you can. I'll keep going as long as I can. Their year in the Starship. It was called a year in the Starship. Year in the Starship, as the press referred to it, became merely the first in a series of tests in years to come to assess closed-loop life support and food supply systems. And you're going to say, yeah, but that was then. No, that wasn't then. They still have the complex. Look. There's the complex. That's what it looks like. Now they call it Mars 500. And you see in the mainstream press that NASA keeps playing around, playing these little tiddlywinks with a manhole cover out in Hawaii, pretending that they're living on Mars. And they keep saying, oh, yeah, you know, we're going to do the whole mission to Mars. And it keeps getting put off and put off. I'm not saying that the Russians are better than the U.S. What I'm saying is that the Russians have these systems in place, the infrastructure, and this is not temporary infrastructure. Okay, they are showing you that they are serious about this. And I would argue that the United States military space programs are just as, if not more serious than the Russians. Why? Because we're going to use their own logic. Sound here was A-OK through the whole thing. Cool. I'm glad. Why am I going to use their logic to support the idea that the United States has something equal to, if not more, sophisticated or advanced as the Russian technologies that I'm outlining for you here today? Oh, yeah, what was that thing? The space race? They wanted us all to believe that propaganda, right? And I'm not saying it was false. What I'm saying is it was news that was delivered to the public of classified information that was declassified or unclassified, delivered to the public, so that way we got behind whatever space missions that they wanted to do. Fine, because Sputnik and all that good stuff. And they spent Laika, they sent Laika up into orbit. Remember the Russians sent that poor dog, the German Shepherd? They never told you what happened to that German Shepherd, did they? Well, maybe some of you know this story. Laika, the dog that went up into space and was up there for a little while. And the Russians were very humane. They didn't want this poor dog burning up on a reentry. So what they did was they had food compartments, and the food compartments were released on a timer. And so this little dog that was up in, near Earth orbit or low Earth orbit was eaten. And then it got to the last couple compartments. The mission was over. And the dog ate dog food that was combined with, I believe it was cyanide. So the little dog was poisoned up in space by the experimental, researchers. That was classified. It's awful. No, I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook. I know I damn well should be. But, with the whole privacy thing. But if you want to share certain videos or even my whole YouTube channel on Facebook, you go right ahead, man. I'm totally cool with that. Okay, so they're killing dogs up in space during the space race, and we're going to use that logic to propel this thing forward. It makes no rational sense to me that if, as we open this up, remember I told you about the Avant, the sort of glider, the hypersonic glider that Russia claims to be developing. Okay, even if they're not, that's what they claim with the CGI graphics and all that good stuff. So the U.S. has gone ahead and started testing, as I showed you, their own hypersonic missile system, their ramjet and scramjet missile systems. And we had a space race way back, and because the Russians were so far ahead of us, we just had to get to be the first ones to get to the moon. Now, military technology told us that we could have done that and had a base on there by 1966, but hey, the Apollo mission 69 is good enough. Right? So here's the clincher. If the Russians have developed all of this technology, the pictures I've shown you and what I've read you, the source material that I've presented to you, why would we think that there's not currently a space race happening today in 2018? Huh? If the space race was so important back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, Mir, the space station Mir, you remember that? Why wouldn't it be more important today, given the evidence that the Russians have tested, are testing, and are developing ionic electric engines and tug systems, docking ports, and they want their own space station in concert with China around 2020 to 2024 when they pull out of the ISS project. No more Russians, no more Chinese on the ISS. Why? Classified military programs. Period. And the public won't, Bug says in the chat room, the public won't support their taxes going towards it, so it's done in secret. You got it. Okay, but they can't grow crops in space. No, they can't grow crops in space. They've never tried to do that before. They have no, the Russians, they're just ancient technology. They have no systems developed at all to grow it, wheat, crops, and you name it in space. Automated systems using recirculation pumps. This looks to me like it looks kind of like a hydroponic system. Although I would be willing to bet you dollars to donuts that they're probably using some kind of foam unless they figured out a way to shift the gravity around. And, you know, they've already developed, past tense, already have developed and tested a space suit for Mars. The Russians have. Engineers, past tense, have developed. There it is. It's what it looks like. Spacesuit for Mars, Russians. Oh, I'm sorry. I need to do. And the Russians have actually developed a spacesuit for Mars. No UFOs, no aliens, military UFOs. Think about it, right? Okay. I am so happy and so delighted that y'all are joining me on this stream here on Twitch. We are going to do some really wonderful things together once YouTube, if, we don't want to be too optimistic, if YouTube ever does get around to reversing my ridiculous live stream strike, then we're going to do some wonderful things on the streams. Hopefully we're going to do some interviews with some leaders in these fields. And also, we're going to bring on some other YouTube content creators that are interested in these areas as well as all areas of the paranormal. And so it really is kind of the whole gambit. I really do want to dive deep into this thing. Now, when we're focusing on this whole Russian technology, again, I need to emphasize, because people pick up these videos and streams at various times, I need to emphasize that I am not pro-communist and I'm not pro-capitalism. I'm quite frankly, both of them bore the hell out of me. I'm just trying to grow crops here on planet Earth and live my life and enjoy myself and be happy. Okay? So this stimulates my brain cells. It stimulates the neurons. And so I like thinking about this kind of stuff. And I think that many of you do as well. At least you've let me know that. Now, in 2008, NASA developed a 12-wheeled Chariot rover that was to be used on Mars. And that's the NASA 12-wheeled rover with their astronauts. I'm not sure if there's people in those suits or not, but this is, an actual structure that was built in 2008 that was operational. Okay? Looks a little prototypical, but that's okay. NASA's operating on a little little bit of a budgetary problem because, the current president of the United States wants to have Space Force. Space Force, you're going to love it. Gina says, correction, ghosts of Mars. The ghosts of Mars. Ice Cube. Hell, I'm getting old. Thanks, Joe, for a great show. You're welcome. You're welcome. The mighty Professor Fez says they popped the cap to see how long the radiation would take to kill it, the poor thing. That's exactly right. That is exactly right. He's talking about Leica the dog. Now, you ready for this one? Again, this is based off of recovered Soviet documents, released, declassified, so I don't want any KGB or KGB or whatever you guys call yourselves. I don't want y'all poisoning me with polonium like you did that guy in the UK. Say hi to, good day to everybody in Australia, and how are you to everybody out there in the UK. After Mars, yeah, the Soviets, I'm thinking like the Russians, they just don't want to go to Mars. They're planning like if we're going to go all the way out there, which this makes total rational sense. Their planning is if we're going to go out to Mars, then we want to make sure that whatever we take out there could then be used to explore from Mars. So they said that having seen the moon as a distant disk from the windows of departing Mars ships, Russian cosmonauts might finally be able to pay it a visit fully 60 years after the Apollo astronauts walked on Earth's celestial neighbor. One of the scenarios of the studies envisaged Russia contributing a module to an international lunar base. Their work would open a whole new venue for the Russian cosmonauts. The next logical destinations beyond Mars would be the asteroid belt and the moons of Jupiter. Russian strategists believe the propulsion and life support technology developed for Mars missions would therefore open up farthest reaches of the solar system, giving access to vast natural resources. Now, how are you going to deal with the radiation as far as the people are concerned? This is how they dealt with it. This is how they planned on it. There was this program to land people on Mars. They said they had a lightweight, versatile suit, and it would work as a safety suit during the launch from Earth and in space, which would involve a thermal and radiation protection coat around the people, along with a life support backpack. And let me tell you, they're going to the moon to stay. Wow. That's some cool stuff. So the lunar base. Now, they of course leave it to the Russians to quote an American. They quote Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney, that insider. That guy who just won't stop running for president. Everybody's like, look, dude, we don't want you. I'm going to keep on running. Got a lot of money to spend. See, that's what I always say about politics. This is the reason why I work for a living, because I've just always thought that politicians are, kind of like you get into politics if you don't want to work. What Mitt Romney said is if they wanted a colony on the moon, I'd say you're fired. See, so Mitt Romney was, if we're going to use certain logic of certain JAnon conspiracy theories, Mitt Romney over here was probably forecasting, right, the election of Donald Trump as president, or C-election, or whatever the case may be. Okay, going to the moon to stay. And the Russians already developed the N-1 rocket to do this. Right there is your engine that they were going to use to blast this sucker off, or one of them. And did you know that the Soviet space program has the largest actual rockets, the largest thrusters, and on the United States spaceships, the launchers, you know, the big cylindrical things, those heavy things, they're using Russian thrusters on those suckers. As far as I know, please prove me wrong. I could be wrong, but this is what they're using. And, oh, you're going to say, no, they didn't build that. No, they didn't build it, did they? What do you think that is? Sorry. There we go. Kind of focus this thing up here. No, they didn't build it. That's just propaganda. No, they're building this stuff, folks. They might be poor as all Hades, but they're using their money where they want to use their money. And in a communist country, it's the military. Military UFOs. Hey, Bulldogs 1992, welcome. And they developed models to show you exactly how they were going to set up KBOM moon bases in 1965. That was their model. That's how they were going to do it. I don't know if, yeah, you guys can see that a little bit. Yeah. 1965. Lunar bases. The Soviets. Some of this stuff is green, so it ain't going to work out too well on the screen. But they built the modules too. You want to see that? There's the modules. There's the inside of the modules where everybody could sit down and they could store things. Medical and biological research module. Full-scale prototype. They say it was dismantled after the end of the moon race. You know, it was dismantled after the end of the moon race. That's why they still have all these pictures of all this stuff, right? And that was their plan for the moon base. There you go. That was their schematic. You guys see anything like that looking through your telescopes up there? Because the Russians were planning on doing it. The Americans were planning on doing it. And I do want to mention the reference number once again of the book so I don't get busted for copyright. This is Russia in Space, The Past Explained, The Future Explored, written and illustrated by Anatoly Zak, which is an Apogee Prime publication. And it was from the rights reserved under Article 2 of the Berne Copyright Convention 1971. It's the division of Griffin Media. And it was 2014 copyright by Griffin Media and Anatoly Zak. Now, I wrote to Anatoly Zak. I did. Now, I still haven't heard back from him. I don't expect to, but then again, you never know. The guy's probably busy. Hell, he might be out there on a mission. You know? But I asked him about what his knowledge of, given his excellent research that was sourced material from actual, real Russian, history. And I asked him what the likelihood is, given the technologies that he's outlined in his fine books. What is the likelihood, given the economic situation of Russia and how they've already been spending their money on things like the Avents and these other classified military programs, what's the likelihood that they've been working on some of this stuff? We already see the pictures. Yep. Launching. We are launching things. Using what? Using movable launch pads. Right here. Movable launch pads. Why do we want to move our launch pads? So the satellites can't figure out where they are from one day to the next, or from one 2-week period to the next. And let me tell you something. You know how we talk about the SSTO spaceplane concept, the single stage 2 orbit concept? Let me pull that up for you for a picture. yeah, NASA's been working on this kind of single stage to orbit, and McDonnell Douglas and all that good stuff. And they've been working on this technology for a while. And basically what it is that it's, instead of using these big rockets, and instead of using the likely classified anti-gravity or torsion physics-based technologies, there's kind of like this halfway in between. Like, we don't want to admit that what we really have, because then we'd have to like say that Roswell was one thing or another. It wasn't aliens. So they developed this kind of concept of single stage to orbit, and this was the Venture Star, which is a proposed SSTO space plane. So that's what NASA was working on. What were the Russians working on? Okay, this is a single stage orbit space plane. It's basically going to go right into orbit. It might ride piggyback on a very large cargo plane. You know, like, oh geez, what was the name of that? I think it was called the Galaxy. It was like a 777 on steroids, like literally the Galaxy class plane. The nose would open up. I have to show you these things because I just get so into this stuff. Galaxy class plane. The Lockheed C5 Galaxy, another Lockheed product. Let me see if I can pull up a picture of the darn thing opened up for you. It's just so you can get a glimpse of the size of this thing. Yeah. So the Americans fly these like SSTO. The plan was we're going to fly these single stage orbit planes on one of these large, huge, big airplanes that can carry all kinds of cargo. This is a C5, Lockheed C5 Galaxy loading onto a wet ramp. That's a truck. that's going into that thing. The nose cone just flips right up. And they were going to put a single staged orbit space plane on one of these things, or a similar plane, and they were going to allow that to go up as high as it could, and then the SSTO single staged orbit plane would launch off of it, go right into space. While the Americans were busy doing that, which I think is a pretty good idea, if we're not going to admit to anti-gravity, the Russians were working on the big stuff. Yeah. This is the stuff that the Russians were working on. They were all about launching heavy payload into space. How can we launch the most junk into space at one time? And so that's what they designed all their launch pads for these vehicles, for the big boys. So why were the Russians in 2008, 2011, still designing larger and larger and larger spacecraft? You're going to say it was for satellites. That's fine. It was for satellites. Has SpaceX ever sent anything up that wasn't a satellite? Yes, SpaceX has sent up. Recently, we've been told, if we're to believe this, that SpaceX has actually delivered, and this was quieted down pretty quick. SpaceX has actually delivered a supply capsule to the ISS. Do you remember that little news story that came out? So they are launching things other than satellites into space, and they're launching very heavy things into space. Let's see what you got there. GE opened factory complex in Alabama today. That will be, this is May 9th, 2018, Huntsville, Alabama. I'm going to open that up. Thank you, Gina says. Yep, it's closed my connection. I guess they don't want me looking at that. I cannot get there, but it says GE Aviation opened the factory complex in Alabama today. It will be the only U.S. location to produce unique materials. Tesla and all this kind of stuff. And they did all kinds of tests on these bad boys. It's not like this is concepts. I mean, all these big rockets, they've already designed them. And if you don't like the pictures I'm showing you, just get the book. It's easy. Just get the book. It's on Amazon. Russia in Space, Anatoly Zak. I've linked it in my Amazon influencer page is Joe from the Carolinas, Amazon influencer. Now, the reusable launch vehicles, they also worked on those. This kind of looks like your typical UFO, okay? And this was in the 1980s. Look at these craft that they were testing. Black triangles. UFOs. Military UFOs. Look at this. Folks, they're testing this stuff. Okay? They're testing this stuff, period. Experimental hypersonic vehicle developed at Flight Research Institute was designed to test a scramjet air-breathing engine when flying 6 to 14 times faster than the speed of sound. That's Mach 6 to 14 at an altitude from 20 to 100 kilometers. Right there. Okay? You want to know where you can find... Did you know that the Concorde airplane that's been around since what? The 70s, the 80s? Pew! You know, the Concorde? How come that's not flying anymore? Do you ever wonder about that? You ever wonder why the Concorde airplane, which was so wonderful, that flew so quickly? Remember that? It kind of like almost went into orbit. Yeah, the Concorde airplane, there's one of them sitting on the tarmac at Charles de Gaulle Airport in France, in Paris, France. There is a Concorde airplane just sitting there. It's like a model. It's like it was in use, and it's a model now. It's like, hey, we don't use these anymore. They're real fast. So when people say that you're out to lunch, I say, show me the evidence. And then they say, well, no, it was all ballistic missile technology. Well, I'm sure you could use all these kinds of different launch technologies for ballistic missiles. However, the actual things that they're developing, electric ion engines and things like that, they're not using that for ballistic missiles because an ion thrusting engine is not designed for short-term flight. An ion propulsion engine is designed for long-term flight. It's a very slow thrust that adds up exponentially over time. So this thing's shooting as fast as possible after several hours of firing this ion thruster. That's not sufficient for doing things within the gravitational pull of Earth, especially like very close to the ground to attack another country. No, they're going to use the Avant system, or they're going to use their other system that they literally can keep. It looks like a cruise missile, but it's a nuclear-powered cruise missile. And the Russians are saying, it might be propaganda, that it can stay in the air indefinitely. This is their story. So we don't, it's like people say, forget about the extraterrestrials. We don't even need to go there. Okay. Folks, what I'm saying is that there is enough evidence that there is a classified secret space program that we don't even need to speculate about anti-gravity technology. We can if we want, but because we know that that's a claptrap, right? We know that that's suppressed. We don't even need to go to anti-gravity. Just using conventional technology, they've been able to do this since, let me get my calculator. Otherwise, I'm going to have to take off my shoes to start counting. I got to use all my fingers and my shoes and count my toes if I'm going to count this high. 2018 minus 1966. You have to excuse me, I'm dumb. 2018 minus 9. Oh, geez. I can't even work a calculator. Equals 52 years. So you mean to tell me that over the course of 52 years, in the development and release of all this information, they just stopped trying to develop things for robots at least to go out into space, even though they've already got robotic space probes that have, by their own report, left the, what do they call it, the umbra, or whatever it is, the heliosphere of our solar system. The Explorer probes, I believe they are. Kind of sad, isn't it? You know, it's like they got robots out there then. It's been 52 years since they said they could have people on the gosh darn moon. So we don't need to go to anti-gravity, even though they're using this ancient 52-year-old plus technology, is what I'm saying. Even jumping to the anti-gravity explanation for a classified covert secret space program, you don't need to go there. You can. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying, for your average normal out there, this is what they need to hear. They need to see that it's possible using what we got. Okay. My friends, I think I'm going to call it a night. I thank you very much for your very kind attention and participation. Thank you to those of you that have stuck with me through this stream, whether you're listening on the archive or you've been very kindly following along here on the Joe from the Carolinas Twitch.tv channel, which is a quote-unquote talk channel, because I'm talking, not gaming. But I really do appreciate all of your support. Please do check out some of the options down below in the description line if you like, and if you don't, that's okay too. You know, these kinds of books, you can go check them out and buy them yourself on Amazon, see how much they cost. I'm committed to trying to share as much information with you as I possibly can and connect the dots in a way using reason, logic, and common sense to confront the idea that Elon Musk is a pea shooter compared to the secret Russian space program. Thank you very much. Have an awesome day, night, evening, and do svidaniya. Bye.